Well, here it is, March 17th. We've passed the Ides of March, and now we're on the day that's much more celebrated in Manchester and many of the places around the world, and certainly in New Hampshire. And it's St. Patrick's Day, of course. And we're going to have a appropriate show for the day to honor the high Irish heritage of so many of our citizens here in the Queen City and in the rest of our viewing area, Auburn, Hooksett, and wherever people are watching on their computers. And it's a beautiful day. I have a few introductory things to mention, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mike, who's going to present our guest for the day to talk about many Irish things, including the Hibernians, the parade, which we're not having this year. Alas, boy, we're going to miss that, folks. But we hope to be back better than ever next year. And the problems with the Irish Republic and its relationship with Ulster as a result of the Brexit. So that's the agenda for today. But I wanted to start out by just saying, as I came down from where I park up near the Wild Rover, walked along Elm Street to here, the good news was that the city was really hopping. Lots of people out enjoying the outdoor seating that's available. The bad news is that the city was really hopping, and most of these people were not socially distanced. Very few of them were wearing masks. It's like the pandemic wasn't there. I hope it doesn't lead to an outbreak here in the city, because just when you think you're getting on top of things, it could all go awry. And so that was very concerning to me. Second thing I'd just like to report is that this week I finally managed, much later than I think I should have, my wife and I to get our first vaccine shots up at SNU. Our date was supposed to be March 31, but I said to Carol, we don't want to wait that long. They should have had the 1B group divided up according to age categories, and I would have been much earlier. So we went up, and by God, we found out they were looking for business. There was no wait at all. I mean, there was some advantage into waiting this long, and I would just point that out for other people. If you are anxious to get your vaccine and you think you have to wait till you're in the appropriate group, and you think you have to wait till a later date, just go up there and you can probably get your shot with no questions asked. They were happy to have somebody come along, and because there was no line, it took very little time. And the last thing I just wanted to say as we open up the show is, I think I've talked about this before. This book, I'm going to try and get the author of this book to be our guest as soon as I can see a way to get in touch with him. But this book is just a hoot, folks. When a libertarian walks into a bear, it's about a town in New Hampshire, Grafton, New Hampshire, which a group of people calling themselves libertarians, well, they were libertarians, they didn't just call them, they were libertarians, long before we had the Free State Project to try and turn New Hampshire into a model for a perfect libertarian society at a state level. There was an attempt to turn a particular town in New Hampshire into a libertarian model of how we could all get along without much or any government at all. And this thing is funny, it's insightful. The author portrays the people he deals with in Grafton, including a name John Babiars, whose name you may remember, he ran for governor several times, with a lot of sympathy in there personally. But you look at what they did, and it's pretty devastating. So I hope we'll get back to that. And that I've taken up more time than I should, Mike, because this is your show and your guest show. So that's it. I'm going to sit back and enjoy listening, and I hope we'll have some calls coming in at 640-3091 as we move forward.
Well, Bob, you better participate, because I only prepared for half a show here. So we're a team. I'm counting on you to jump in. But we're glad to be here. We have an excellent guest Skyping in with us, and I want to thank him for doing it. The reason I thought that Mike Dolphin would be a good guest is because, one, he's a great Manchester guy. He's got a great Manchester history. He's an officer with the Ancient Order of Hibernians, so we can talk about that organization and not have me just going on and on. And also, he's a member of the St. Patrick's Parade Committee, which is a completely separate standalone entity that puts on this parade. And it turns out perhaps our timing is good, because apparently there was a little bit of a hit piece or a complaint in the union leader about the decision not to have the parade. So
there was an editorial today, Mike. That's what you're talking about, I'm sure.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And also, the other reason that Mike is great is because Mike is the chairman of the Hibernians Freedom for All Ireland effort, which is a major component of the national Hibernian movement, as well as what we do here in Manchester. And he really is my personal expert on, the Good Friday agreements, what's going on in Northern Ireland right now. And people may not realize it, but there's trouble there. The word trouble is has special meaning when we talk about Northern Ireland. But there's trouble there. There's trouble brewing, and Brexit didn't help. But there's a lot more going on than that. So enough about me. As you know, Bob, Mike, I want to welcome you to the show. Thank you for coming on, and I'm hoping to learn something from you while we talk. But what we always do on the show, I said this a little bit before we got started. People show up and a parade happens and they think it's like magical, but the real thing is there's folks that actually do the work. And we always try to highlight that here on the Progress Report. So you're going to have to brag a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about your background, how you ended up where you are in Manchester, and tell us who you are. Introduce
Sure.
us.
Thanks for having me, Mike. Bob, thank you very much. Born and bred in Manchester my whole life. I grew up on the west side, went to West High School and, Keene State and master's degrees in Notre Dame and all these other colleges, and spent about 4 decades in education, starting in the 70s at Central. Taught there, coached there, and then in the early 80s went into guidance, started in Pembroke school system, or Pembroke. They'll be mad at me for saying Pembroke. And then decade and a half, I was at Alvern and Hudson as a guidance director. And then my last 10 years at Londonderry in the same capacity. President of the school counselors, founded the Guidance Directors Association, and union president here and there and all that sort of stuff. I have 2 adult children, one here in town, and my daughter Tara, and my son Tom lives in Sharon, but he teaches in Boston Public Schools, following in the footsteps because his mother, my wife Kathleen, also was a teacher in Londonderry after years at the VA. And I have 6 grandchildren, 4 locally, keep me very busy with to and from school. So it's a blast. So, and that's why I don't have to work part-time. I already have a full-time job with the grandkids.
A great job.
Whenever we ask folks to introduce themselves, it's always surprising to hear how much people contribute and accomplish, and you're no exception to that, Mike. You've been a great officer with the Hibernians, and I want to start with the parade committee. When the parade committee came calling, you volunteered, and you're an active member of that committee now as well. Can we talk a little bit about that? Really get down to the basics. Explain to the viewers what the St. Patrick's Parade Committee is, how it's set up. It's not a department of the city of Manchester, for example. No. And that might be something we want to highlight. But can you start with that? Give us a little background about it.
Well, I just volunteered a couple of years ago. I'm certainly not a longstanding member because there was a need for committee members. 2 or 3 people, due to moves and so forth, resigned. And so we were down to I think 6 people. So there's 8 of us at this point. It's totally volunteer, as I said. And we start meeting, right in the fall. And we have to go right from August to September, right through to the parade, which is now March 27th, 2022, and it's still the 25th parade, which has been on hold obviously for a couple of years. And then everything you can think of, we have to do. It's not something that the city of Manchester pays 1 penny for. The city or anybody here, it's all sponsors, and we have to get sponsors to help us. Some of the restaurants, some Millennium Running, many individual donors, Brady Sullivan, Ann Agnostic, Betty, pretty gracious with their money because it costs well over $50,000 to run the parade. So
I want to jump in on that, Mike.
Yes.
Because there was an editorial in today's newspaper complaining seeming to link the city with the parade, and I want to dispel that rumor that somehow, the alderman or the mayor's office, as gracious as they are, in assisting, providing what's needed at a cost. This parade is run by private individuals. The city's got nothing to do with it.
Correct. And so, obviously we canceled really late last year. It was like it was 2 days before the actual passing of the sash mass at St. Raphael's, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit too. But
well, let's do that now. We'll put off the cancellations. Let's talk about what ordinarily would go on in the month of March. And these events, they're all private events. They're put on by different organizations, but there's kind of a commonality about it because the organizations work together to make them successful. And you mentioned the passing of the Sash Mass. The fact of the matter is that St. Patrick is a saint. There is a religious component to the holiday. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, St. Raphael's Church holds the passing of the Sash Mass. It's usually the first Saturday in March, and it coincides with their St. Patrick's dinner, which is right after the Mass. There's also St. Joseph's Cathedral and St. Catherine's have St. Patrick's celebrations in the month of March as well, within 2 weeks of each other. So the previous Grand Marshals from the parade get together, not necessarily all 24 of them, but a few, and make the decision. So even the parade committee doesn't get involved with making the Grand Marshal decision. And so once that's decided, they're nominated, forms are filled out, and so forth. It's announced. We invite the recipient to come to the Mass with family and friends, and we actually have other Grand Marshals there with their sashes on and their families. And we actually, Father Jerome Day, the pastor of St. Raphael's, does the Mass and does the passing of the sash. We actually make known of it. He speaks about the Hibernians and the Irish in his homily, and we actually have a ceremony for that. Then the party, I guess, starts and continues upstairs in the old gym at St. Raphael's after that. So usually that's how it works. But again, that particular part is the Grand Marshal selection is not something that the parade committee gets involved in at all. We don't want any part of that. We want to be totally, transparent about that and let those decide. So that makes it even better as far as we're concerned.
Yeah, that Grand Marshal position, I've often said is second only to the Bishop of the Diocese of Manchester in importance in the Irish community in Manchester. That is a very prestigious position. And as you've said, the parade committee doesn't pick that. There's no politics involved. It's a committee of past Grand Marshals who review all the nominations and make the final selection. And the only thing that you left out with regard to the blessing of the sash and the passing of the sash mass is that the Ancient Order of Hibernians is very involved in that mass. We present the colors for the Mass and march in with bagpipes to give it the due ceremony that it deserves, and also participate at the dinner. So after that, the next step is you guys getting ready for the parade. Now, what's involved in that? How many organizations do you have to bring together? Let's leave aside the sponsorships. You have to get folks who are willing to come up to Manchester and march down Elm Street.
Right, and typically it might be 4 or 5 divisions. When we were planning the 25th last year, we were going to try to make it a little bigger. We wanted to make it a little more special. We were talking to some different groups out of state to come, like the Syracuse Kilties in New York State, places like that. So we typically will go right to the Manchester School District and ask the bands to participate. And then they make a decision based on a rota or whether all 3. And then others, Milford's been there, Bishop Girton, Londonderry usually ends up at the end. And then all the other organizations are solicited. Sometimes with repeat participation, they contact us, but we also contact them. And of course, there's an expense to that too as well. If the Syracuse Kilties, when they came, before, they have to bus up, they have to stay overnight and so forth. So they're not going to do that for free.
Yeah.
So each of the groups that march or participate in the parade, except for the Hibernian volunteers and others, get something, get a fee that's really kind of, I wouldn't say, I can't think of a better term, but negotiated between our chairperson and them.
Hey, Mike, how long has the parade been an institution in Manchester? And has there ever been a year other than last year, I guess, and this year when we haven't had a parade since it started?
No, I believe it ran, so I'd have to do my math. The 25th was supposed to be 20, so I'm assuming that's,
95?
95 or 85, whatever. And so, obviously, some of us were concerned with the parade not happening. We were afraid that it might be hard to, reinvigorate and get started again.
Yeah.
In 21. And so, but everybody in the committee is fully committed to, at the appropriate time when we can all get together, because obviously we haven't met since March 2020. We've been emailing and communicating that way with what we need to do.
Another thing that comes up a lot of time, the parade is the best and biggest parade we have in the city of Manchester every year when we have it, which has been every year for a long time, except for last year and this year. And yet a lot of times we don't see the Manchester high school bands march. We'll see great bands from, Londonderry, Methuen, all over the region, not just New Hampshire. But some years the Manchester high school bands have participated. Why is it that some years they don't?
Well, I think in the past, from what I gather, I think at some point there was a rotation, whether it's West and then Central and then Memorial in consecutive years. I also, and again, there might be weather issues with instruments out in the cold and so forth.
Yeah.
I'm not too sure as far as why, but obviously we want to make sure that, the superintendent of schools in Manchester gets a contact from us. All three bands can march.
Yeah.
We don't have a problem saying all three can be represented. It's really been their decision to either not participate or just send one band.
Okay.
Go ahead with your.
All we can do is ask, right? All we
Yes.
can do is ask. We make the opportunity available. But Bob does make an excellent point. Another question that comes up all the time, and every year that we do a show about the parade, we try to talk about it. Our parade is a little later in the month than most other parades. But in addition to having a better shot at good weather, we also get an opportunity to work with bands who might be tied up earlier in the month, right?
Correct. We don't want to compete with Boston on the High Holy Day, as well as Chicopee, Holyoke area. Hartford has one. Syracuse has one. So deliberately, 25 years ago, it was moved to the end of the month for that purpose, to make people understand that, we don't just celebrate St. Patty's on one day. That, it is Irish Heritage Month every year. City of Manchester, that's important. We don't want to be stereotyped into one day and think that all we do is go out and throw a few down and that's the end of it. It's much more than that. And we want to celebrate our ancestry and make people understand. Plus, it's a good time. If it is better weather, that's great. But we want to make sure that we can get as many good bands, anything else that we're looking for that year, specialty groups and so forth to come here.
Yeah, I would say the person who decided let's not try and compete with other bands on the St. Patrick's Day itself, that was a stroke of genius, because people are just as happy to put on the green and be Irish, in 10 days after after the actual St. Patrick's Day date, which is today, and still come out and, as you said, chances are you're going to get better weather, more participation. Worked out great.
Yes.
And the parade has expanded a little bit too. There's now a road race associated with it. The turkey trot, not the turkey trot. The what do they call it, Mike?
Oh, I don't know. It's just Shamrock Shuffle. Something
Shamrock
like,
Shuffle. That's what it is.
yeah, yeah,
A senior moment on my part of all things to forget. But and also it's a real big boost for the businesses in downtown Manchester. And one thing that we always try to point out, it may not have the impact this year, is some of the businesses in Manchester contribute.
correct.
Some of the businesses in Manchester do not contribute, but they're very happy to put out a special or something on the day of the parade to try to get people in. So
Yeah.
we try to have people look for those signs in the window that says they're a sponsor of the parade and try to go and do your celebrating along with the folks who help put that parade on. Right, Mike? Back
Well,
me up.
we make a big deal out of that as far as thanking them. I volunteered for the task last year to deliver thank you plaques. They're all framed. And I went to, it took me 2 or 3 full days to go around to deliver plaques and thank Brady Sullivan, Anik Noss, Strange Brew, Shashkeen, Rover, and so forth, Murphy's, Candy Road Convenience, tire companies. I went there during the workday and brought them this certificate encased in a glass frame, and you might have thought I just gave them a Megabucks winner. They were so appreciative of the visit, not because it was me, but as a representative of the committee, thanking them personally for helping us, sponsoring us, contributing, for the successful parade the year before. And then when you go back to those offices, you see the plaque adorned on their wall.
Yeah.
So it is really important for us to be cognizant of that and to thank people, not just send an email, to actually go and say thank you in person. And I'm telling you, I was touched by how people were touched.
Yeah. Hey, I just want to remind folks that we do welcome callers to our show. If you're selling St. Patrick's Day, maybe at home maybe you're not having green mere, maybe you're having a wee dram of Irish whiskey, whatever you're doing, if you're feeling Irish today and you want to be part of our discussion about Irish heritage in Manchester, we've been talking about the parade, which is a really interesting subject, but we welcome participating in any subject. You can call us at 640-3091, and we'd love to hear from you. Okay, let's see if we can drum up a call, but in the meantime, let's press on.
Well, I hope there are folks watching in as they celebrate this great holiday. It is a great holiday, but as Mike pointed out, because St. Patrick's Day falls in the month of March, Irish folk really start getting, people with Irish blood in them really start getting excited. It's springtime. People want to get outside. And the month of March is really important with all the different activities that go on. But I definitely want to point out that for the past several years, Mayor Craig and Mayor Gatsis before her have declared the month of March Irish Heritage Month in the city of Manchester. So this has been something that's been recognized. The Irish people think of Manchester a lot. They think of it as a French city because, the West Side has a very strong French population. And of course, we had a lot of French people working in the mills, but people forget the Irish built the mills.
And we have a caller, Mike.
Oh, excellent. Let's take a call.
Oh, I'm sorry, caller. Caller, I'm sorry I didn't quite get to you in time, but we'd love you to call back. I'll put you right on if you want to get down and dial us in again. We'd love to hear what you have to say. So please call back, and we'll make sure you get part of the show real promptly. Sorry about that.
That would be great. No worries. Hope they call back. But it is very nice that the city also recognizes the contribution, allows the parade committee, for example, to paint the shamrocks on Elm Street, which is always a sure sign of springtime. And even though we're not doing the parade this year,
okay, here's the caller.
We definitely. All right, let's take that call.
Hey, caller, welcome. If you're back with us, we're glad to have you. You're on the air with me and Mike and Mike.
Thank you so much. Phil, I just want to wish you guys a happy St. Patrick's Day.
That's very
You
kind.
have a great guest, Mike Dolphin. Always looked up to him. Peace. Enjoy your St. Patrick's Day.
Well, thank you for those nice words. We really appreciate it. Thanks for
Thank you.
thanks for joining us for that nice comment. Bye.
Bye-bye.
There you go. That's nice.
Yeah,
Phil always has a kind word.
Yeah.
I'm sure you know who that was, Mike.
I did. I said, Phil, you're another good educator.
Most definitely. Good friend of the show, too. Listen, Mike, let's finish up with the parade because I'd like to move on to some other topics that are timely here on St. Patrick's Day. Who is the current Grand Marshal who has been Grand Marshal now for a year and will be Grand Marshal for yet another year and another year beyond that?
Yeah,
Will end up being
longest standing grant. Stephanie McLaughlin, who young professional, was elected last year. So she came to Elm Street and helped us paint the Shamrocks in March of 20. So obviously she's going to continue and be recognized in March of 22 at the passing of the sash, and have her special car with her family and friends to go down Elm Street on March 27th, 2022.
excellent. And now, as far as the committee, if folks want to get involved, if they want to sponsor, if they'd like to get involved on the committee, how do they, do you have a website? How do folks get in touch with you guys?
Yeah, the website is actually, if they just Google Manchester, Hampshire, St. Patrick's Parade, they can contact us there. There's also a countdown of the days, hours, and minutes to the next parade, the different sponsors, pictures of all the different parades, all the committee members that are there, that are on there, anything that they need. They can email people directly if they want to, but I think if they email the site, again, we actually talked last year and it didn't happen yet. We're actually trying to get more people on the committee. We're trying to, spread the work, because, like the old show, 8 is not enough. It's really not enough for something this big.
Well, it is a big task. It is a big task. I'd like to switch gears a little bit and move into another area that's really near and dear to my heart, and I'm sure it is to yours too. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the organization, the Ancient Order of Hibernians. Folks have heard me go on, but I thought you and I could have do a little interview format, a dialogue, and maybe pull from you. You've been a Hibernian for a while. And you and I have never really sat down. How do you like it so far? Tell us a little bit about your Hibernian experience, why you joined up, what appealed to you, and how it's been being a Hibernian.
Obviously, it's in the blood. My father was the first president of the St. Raphael's Club before it became the Raphael Club, and he was an active Hibernian in the 30s, 40s, and 50s before it kind of dissipated. So I joined, but I really could never get to a meeting. The hours for my job, I'd go in and the dark and come home at dark, and it'd be 6 o'clock and I'd feel bad. So when I retired a few years ago, I started taking my dear departed father-in-law to the meetings, and at 93 years old, and he loved it. But then I believe there was an opening because you were moving up to president for recording secretary. So looked like there wasn't going to be any volunteers, so I volunteered. And I'm telling you, I couldn't believe it. Yes, there is work, as you know, Mike, more work than people realize, but to ask for help from the brothers, to ask our colleagues to pitch in and do the soup kitchen servings that we do 4 or 5 times a year, to do anything else was tremendous. And it's such a great group of guys. And then all the volunteers, the adoptive family that we do at Christmas, the road races that we do, and just to promote, our Christian charity, our unity, and our faith. It's a real important part of my life.
Well, I'm really glad to hear that. Organizations like this, fraternal organizations, they're kind of old-fashioned. Where we recruit every day everyone we talk to that might even be wearing a green necktie. We ask them if they're Irish and if they might be interested. Recruiting's a real one-on-one thing, but it's tough to get young folks involved. Talk about you highlighted a few of them. Talk about some of the activities that we do. Like you talked about road races. that's a major activity that we get together on. We just did one last week. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Well, with Millennium running and now Total Image running, we just basically serve as traffic coordinators or race marshals to help keep the runners, and keep the cars from hitting the runners during the races. Obviously, the companies are helpful to us because we're not, we don't have any fundraising sources, so they give us a few bucks here and there to help us. But I forget how many were there Saturday, 18 to 20 of us. But when the runners go down on the course, they're thanking us for coming out. As you know, Mike, it's a true community spirit in my mind. We did that race on December 8th, and that was a wet snow on the Immaculate Conception, and it was down at Canal Street. Remember, it was horrible. It was snowing sideways, and there were people out there running the Santa Shuffle, and they're thanking us profusely for showing up. Over and over again. So I think, even though they may not see the AOH on our back and front, they know that it makes a difference that we're there. So that's really important. I think that, when we volunteer and we serve a few times a year at the soup kitchen and to help out those folks, and, as you know, sometimes we have to scramble, but sometimes we've had my grandchildren there, some of the guys that are older than me come up, and even though it might be an hour and a half, 2 hours on a Saturday, later in a month, they're there. And then the people that we serve to, as you know from doing it, they're thanking us again. These people that come in for a meal and going back out are thanking us. And then the adoptive family, which is a huge thing for us, as you know, to deliver presents to families in Manchester in December, to give them a meal and to see their faces and to see the kids. You can't beat that.
Well, those are three of the most important things that we do.
We got another phone call, guys.
Excellent. Let's take the call.
Hi there. You're welcome on the Progress Report with me and Mike and Mike. Love to hear what you got to say or a question or comment.
Hi, I'm enjoying your program very much tonight, and we're celebrating St. Patrick's Day here in Manchester and loving your show.
Well, that's nice.
Excellent.
Okay.
Well, I was also wondering, are there any opportunities in Manchester for women of Irish descent to join a similar organization as the Hibernians?
There's a really good question. Thank you.
That is a great question.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Mike, I'm going to let you take that one. I'm sure you can take that one and hit it out of the park.
Well, the LAOH, Ladies Ancient Order Hibernians, is an active group. The president of the group serves on the parade committee, but every time I see her, she's looking for all sorts of assistance. So women getting involved, joining, number one, and making a decision to do something. I think from being president, Mike, if a brother has an idea at a meeting, it's pretty hard to turn that idea down if they're going to help us run with it. So whether or not AOH wants to promote, Catholicism more or pro-life or be a bigger presence, it really comes from the membership. So I would encourage all women of Irish descent to join, first of all, get to a couple meetings. Caitlin Curran is the president. She's a sweetheart. She's easy to work with, talk to, and she'll pretty much, allow all kinds of new ideas to come in.
So women may not join AOH, but there is an equal coordinate organization called the AOH Auxiliary that women are part of. Is that right?
It is not an auxiliary. We have to be very careful to make that clear, huh, Mike?
Correct.
The title is
LAOH.
Ladies Ancient Order of Hibernians. It is a separate organization. It is a descendant of the Daughters of Erin, which was a women's Irish organization back in the 1800s. And they grew closer to the Ancient Order of Hibernians and ultimately changed their name to the LAOH, and they are affiliated with us. And we work very closely with the ladies of the Ancient Order of Hibernians, especially on our Adopt a Family program. They're an integral part of that, and they help make that happen. So I would encourage the caller to go online, look it up, and reach out to Caitlin Curran. I'm sure she would welcome you with open arms.
Very good.
Agreed. No doubt about that.
Okay.
It's a great organization, a great organization.
Do you maintain
Well, Mike-
any relationship? You know, a lot of cities in the U.S. have sister cities overseas. Is there anything like that for the Ancient Order of Hibernians? Do you have an affiliate organization in the Irish Republic?
Not that, I'm
No,
not sure.
actually,
We don't?
the fact of the matter is, Mike, we do. Several years ago, and I
Well,
should
hold
know
that thought. I'm going to grab this other call. We got calls coming in.
Very good.
Hey, caller, thanks for joining us. You're on the air with the Progress Report and our Mike and me. Got a comment or a question? Love to hear from you.
Hey, Bob, Mike and Mike. This is Jim. I'm Hibernian, and I am on the parade committee. Just wanted to congratulate you guys on having such a great guest tonight, Mike Dolphin, who is the Hibernian of the Year this year.
Oh, my, that's a good
such
honor.
a wonderful asset to
Yeah.
the parade committee,
Yeah.
as well as the Ancient Order of Hibernians. Hard worker. Happy to see him on the show and hearing him receive all of the accolades that he so richly deserves.
That's
Good
wonderful.
job, boys.
Great. Thank
you,
you so
Jim.
much for calling. I'm sure
Thanks for calling,
Mike and
Jim.
Mike appreciate it too. That's a really fine call. Thank you.
And I appreciate so much that Jim pointed out that in addition to all the other things I said about Mike Dolphin, he is in fact the current Hibernian of the Year. He was for all the work he did in 2020 for the AOH. He's a fantastic guy.
Yeah, but Jim Walsh, let me tell you, gentlemen, Jim Walsh does so much on the parade committee. He's amazing. All the interim treasurer, interim president, all these sorts of things. It's truly amazing what he does. He's the guy at Frank Signs that prints up all of the thank you and puts them in the glass frames. So I think, he's a little modest, but I'm going to send him back kudos for all he does.
Yeah. Wonderful contributions you get from your members, obviously. Some great people.
It really is a team effort. It really is a team effort. And it's amazing what an individual can do and what an individual contribution can do to an organization. Right, Mike? I mean,
Absolutely.
You talk about stepping in to fill shoes. I remember that meeting when you tapped me on the shoulder and said you'd be willing to step up and be recording secretary, because I don't know if you recall, but I had been recording secretary and vice president at the same time, and I was afraid I'd have to be all three.
Right. Yes. Well, that's what I was concerned too, because, nobody was volunteering. So I figured, hey, why not?
There you go.
And I'm glad I did.
Yeah. That's the
Not as glad as I am. Listen, Mike, I would like to turn the subject in the last 15 minutes or so of the show to talk about probably a little bit more serious matters. You're the chairman of our Freedom for All Ireland committee, and that encompasses more than just unification. There are some very specific projects that the National AOH has been working on, and you've been very involved in those, and you've been reporting back to the division how we can get involved. Can you talk a little bit about those? I mean, there's several topics.
Sure.
Pick one that's close to your heart.
Well, the first thing is just that, every Christmas there's a Christmas appeal. There's actually 16 organizations in the north of Ireland, and actually one of them is in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, you can believe it, that promote peace. Now, there could be boxing clubs to get kids in to do sport. There's definitely museums. There's definitely money or help for Patriots' graves. Some of the people in the north that were murdered and killed in the last 50 plus years, and their families. So that's a big deal. There's a guy in the Bronx, Martin Galvin, that is amazing. He just does so much for for Ireland and the North and all the things that he provides. Tremendous leadership. I try to, pay attention to everything he sends me and to get more informed. But basically, the biggest issue right now is legacy of justice. Despite 2 apologies 10 years ago from then Prime Minister Cameron over collusion with Royal Ulster Constabularies, there's been several incidents, not just Bloody Sunday in 72, but 1989, 1992, there's been murders. There's been a Graham bookmaker atrocity where they just walked in and AK-4 and killed people. And a matter of fact, on February 5th of 2021, there was a 29th anniversary. So I should tell you this story of that. So on February 5th, 1992, unlike here until maybe now, there was bookmakers clubs. So imagine a room 28 by 12, and there's people all over the place doing whatever, looking at horse races or sitting there betting, and in comes Royal Ulster Constabularies, Northern Irish Police.
What is the RUC?
Royal Ulster Constabulary, which is basically an arm of the United Kingdom, the British, not. So they just walked in and started shooting. One in the afternoon, started shooting. They killed several people, but this one particular guy named Billy Sykes, who's now 64 years old, went down on the floor, but they shot him in the arms and stuff. He survived. So 29 years later, they do a memorial every year at the site, and they decided they're going to, with COVID, they're going to just send out social media posts. There's only 15 people there. The RUC showed up and actually chased this Billy Sykes who was there. They just were praying and they had flowers down. It looked like a Three Stooges thing from what I read. They were chasing them all over the neighborhood, and 6 particular policemen pinned him up against the wall and arrested him. For who knows? This is the kind of stuff that's been going on for a long time. They keep apologizing for what they're doing, the Brits, but they keep doing it. All of the murders and so forth, all the way back to Bloody Sunday, there's still been no public inquiry and no anything. So that's why Senator Menendez and Senator Collins have a resolution in the United States Congress to have Ireland and accept full implementation of the Good Friday agreements in 1972. So that's all we're asking for. Nobody wants to go back to the Troubles and go back and fight, but these random killings still occur. I know it doesn't get as much press here, but and so forth. And again, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom apologized twice and admitted collusion in public and to the families, but yet no prosecutions, no increase still.
Yeah.
That really drives me crazy.
Well, the Good Friday Agreement goes back to how many years now?
1998.
1998. So it's got, 23 years or something behind it. But you keep hearing it's very fragile and it could easily fall apart. And that would be really tragic, wouldn't it, for Irish on both sides of the border?
I mean, some of the stuff is a little mundane in the specifics, but they want to counsel, for example, to promote peace between the Republic and the North.
Yeah.
Imagine that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
And so how can we promote peace if they're not going to actively engage in discussions? So that's why the National AOH has partnered with legislators, and that's right now there's pending law before Congress, whether or not the resolution passes.
Yeah.
Have to keep an eye on that to kind of put pressure on the United Kingdom to allow the North and the South to get together and start full implementation. That's all. They agreed to it. Let's implement it.
And now it's my understanding, you can tell me, Mike Dolphin, if I'm right, that with the Brexit, there's increased tensions about maintaining the agreement and the concern about whether or not the current line between the Irish Republic and Ulster, Northern Ireland, is going to go back to being a real border with checkpoints and customs and all that. Because Britain can leave the EU, but there is a border they have that's not separated by the English Channel, and it's in Ireland.
Yes.
So
You
what's
said
going
it
on with that?
perfectly. Some of my friends who have been over, before COVID, if they went to the north, they felt, they saw a much larger military presence in the streets and so forth, this RUC group. So the tension is certainly mounting. I mean, in 1989, there was a lawyer who worked with Bobby Sands and the folks in the hunger strike, Pat Finucane. He was murdered, a civil rights attorney. And that's one of the things the Prime Minister mentioned. He mentioned, Cameron, he's sorry that there was collusion and that his wife and his son still haven't had any adjudication, any justice, any trials, nothing.
Is there any effort at building goodwill between the two parts of Ireland? I mean, is there any joint committees to work on exchanges or I don't know. I mean,
there's all sorts of folks over there, based upon some of the things I viewed on webinars, that are working diligently to try to, create, maintain, establish relationships with both sides.
yeah.
And so they're usually highlighted by our AOH brethren, in the country. So there's all sorts of stuff going on. You wouldn't believe, but again, we had a deportation last year too of a guy that was here forever.
Yeah.
And he was deported after 24 years in the States. I mean, I'm not saying in 1981 after the Troubles he decided, as a 24-year-old he was gonna bomb some stuff. He didn't kill anybody, and he went to jail for 7 years.
Yeah.
But then they bombed his house with his wife and kids in it. So he brought his kids to New Jersey, had his own construction business, and after almost 20 years of fighting, he was deported. But I watched him at a Zoom meeting in the summer of 20, and he said, as soon as I got to the building in New York, New Jersey, they handcuffed me. They put me on a plane. They went to Nova Scotia to refuel, and they wouldn't take the handcuffs off. I couldn't even go to the bathroom. So, he said, I'm never going to see my children again and my wife.
Yeah.
He's never going to get back here.
Does AOH, or I don't know, are you part of organizations that believe that the ultimate goal has to be the total unification of Ireland under the one government in Dublin? Because that's going to be a really fraught thing, because the United Kingdom consists its home territories, includes Northern Ireland, in addition to England, Scotland, and Wales.
Yeah, we would love it to be that way. We know it might be, a very long shot, but at least if the Good Friday the agreements were fully implemented, and there was these councils established to let both sides start, organized talks, discussions. So the 23 years that have passed by with nothing could take place. And there's always, Sinn Féin used to be a more rebel group. And now they're a parliamentary group that, thankfully doesn't, adhere to violence anymore.
Yeah.
So they're in parliament. They're involved. So, we don't want anybody to get killed on any side. We just want people to start talking and to work together to reduce these murders and reduce the violence.
Mm-hmm.
It is very interesting that it is a one-sided situation in the north. While in the past you might have heard about certain organizations such as the IRA, which do still exist, but they've ceased fire. They're not as active as they were during the times of the Troubles. But Mike, what I'm getting from this conversation is that the people, these private organizations that our Christmas fund drive helps contribute to, these boxing clubs where Protestants and Catholics can get together and participate in common activities and grow to know each other as people, which is something, there's so much segregation in the living and everything else over there. It's very hard for people to see each other as real humans when they're demonized like this. So all these private organizations are working hard toward unification of the peoples, or at least peace. And it's the governments that can't get their act together, that won't even talk. And I wonder if it's because of the trending. Is not the trend toward unification among the Irish. And isn't it a situation that they really don't want to talk about that because they know that's where it's going?
Well, perhaps. I know that Prime Minister Johnson has actually, for Bloody Sunday, there was only one British officer mentioned by a number to be prosecuted, and now that's been dropped. So, I mean, I think if you're going to admit to collusion and murders, his predecessors, and you're going to, acknowledge that there's issues, what's so wrong with talking? What's so wrong with sitting down with the opposite side and be serious about discussions? Now, maybe because of generations and hundreds of years of issues, maybe it's just a folly. But the impediments are coming from the United Kingdom's powers that be. The same pattern now, gentlemen. Something happens, there's an apology. Oh, we're really sorry. It's usually at a lower level. But then when it gets to the top, I'm not doing anything to prosecute those officers. So who's on first here? So I think people these families, victims' families, there's a museum. There's actually one of the groups in North is a cemetery where all the victims are buried that's kept up by this Christmas appeal. And they offer tours and so forth and remembrance, not because they want to be maudlin about it, but they want people to know why this occurred, why Bloody Sunday occurred, why the Troubles, and who's buried here and what they did.
Yeah. Truth and reconciliation.
That's it. Yeah.
There's no way to get peace. We saw it in South Africa until you determine the truth, declare what it is, and then you can begin the reconciliation process.
Right. So just let them talk formally. Let them go about their business and stop impeding the process.
Yeah.
Prime Minister Johnson, really, that falls on him.
Well, I tell you, it just seems amazing to me. The history of Europe has got centuries of bloody warfare over religion, the 30 Years' War. I mean, all these wars that went on over, Catholics versus Protestants. And somehow, maybe this is just totally wrong on my part, seems like the Irish are still stuck in that mindset. One group, the Protestants, is got to be fought by the other group, the Irish Catholics, and vice versa. It just seems like it's, it should have been left behind centuries ago. I mean, who's going to fight over whether your kids are Catholic or Protestant in this country these days?
I'm going to say
probably
two
aren't going to go to church
that.
at all, but most likely.
I want to say two things about that. There's a joke that when the Irish get Alzheimer's, they forget everything but the grudges.
I've heard that one.
So you got to understand.
My late friend Senator John Durkin told me that. Yep.
There's something in the blood there. But the other thing is, I think people might not fully appreciate it is not so much a religious battle. This is a political conflict. This is not a conflict over the vestments that are to be worn in the liturgy, or over people changing their faith like it was back in the times of Elizabeth and Mary. This is more. I think the religion is more matter of fact that the groups come out of these heritages as opposed to it being a religious conflict over doctrine.
Okay, fair enough. But it still seems very anachronistic to me. But I guess I certainly hope the Good Friday agreements don't get trashed, because I don't think anybody on either side of this border in Ireland is going to want to go back to the Troubles. That was gross and terrible, and violence begets violence,
horrible.
And we saw it. There was plenty of violence on both sides.
That's right.
Yeah.
You can never
want to be back at that
like
again.
That.
So
Never.
Everybody should bend their efforts to, as Mike says, find a way to get the truth out and then get reconciliation, truth and reconciliation.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what really needs to happen. Well, this has been a fascinating discussion of this, as well as the wonderful work your organization does, your organizations, I should say, the Parade Committee and the AOH do in our Queen City, and it's just a real inspiring example of great activism. And Mike, these calls that have come in that are a tribute to you that I know you richly appreciate and certainly deserve. So it's really great to have you. We will not
Thank
be
you
able
very
to.
much.
We'll really miss not having a parade this year. Really will. I'm telling you, there will be
Yeah.
plenty of people out to watch it. From what I saw walking down Elm Street this afternoon, plenty of people. But
Yeah.
we gotta be
We'll
safe.
hope that we can
We're
hopefully
hoping
be
to.
back on track next year. Let's hope for that.
Yeah, hope it's a really terrific parade next year, and I hope pretty much everybody is going to stick around to be able to participate in it. Best of all, and at least watch it, because it's a wonderful event you guys do for the Queen City, and it's been a real important part of our civic life for all these years, and you both have made major contributions to it. So there you go. We're pretty much at the end here. Any final thoughts, either one of you guys, Mike and Mike? Anything
Well,
you
just
got
thanks for the
we've left unsaid
opportunity,
you'd
and,
like to talk about?
I get a little passionate, but it is a two-sided problem too. I don't want people to think that one side's always right and one side's always wrong.
Right.
It's not the case.
Right.
Well, we definitely have appreciate you coming on, Mike, and you spent a lot of time studying this. Thanks for the information. Anyone who wants to get involved in the Ancient Order of Hibernians, if you've got any Irish blood in you at all, we would welcome men of goodwill. Our website is AOHDiv1, or you can go to AOH.com and find us through the national website. We'd love to talk to you about membership.
Okay. Well, all the good work you
gentlemen.
do, I'm sure you could use more people to help with the lifting on that good work. So
There you
great.
go. All right.
And Mike, thank you so
Thanks
much,
for having
Mike
me. I
Dolphin. Thank you
appreciate
so
it.
much for joining us. It was really
All right,
terrific
thank you.
for you to be here and contribute the way you have. So, folks, this will wrap it up for this edition of the Progress Report. Mike and I will be back next week, which will be the 24th. That'll be the next to the last show of the month of March. So you'll be with me on the 24th, and March 31st will be a Wednesday, and you'll be with me then. And then after that, I'll have Lou D'Alessandro back. I don't know what we're going to plan for next week, but we'll see something. And follow my Facebook page, folks, because I try and post what's coming up on the show at least somewhat before the show airs. Sometimes it's the same afternoon. Sometimes it's the day before. But do look at that if you want to know what we got coming up. We will undoubtedly have a guest, and I hope will be somebody as interesting as Mike Dolphin's been. But again, thank you very much. Hey, everybody, enjoy the remainder of your St. Patrick's Day.